every single time I hear about Dragon Age of Veilguard now, it is somebody coping over this title's failure, whether it's the Access Media saying it deserved to be a Game of the Year contender and win awards, or a developer saying that EA didn't give them enough time to cook, even though it had hundreds of millions of dollars put into it and a decade worth of development time. But now we're hearing that apparently its failure is owed to live service pivots. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Whenever I hear about this game, it's always somebody coping. It's never a fan of this game defending it or talking about it or promoting it. It's always somebody going on about why it failed and how unfair it was. But now, this article says if there's a AAA game that bombs hard in the market, you can bet that Bloomberg journalist Jason Schreier will eventually figure out why that happened. Jason Schreier, I feel like there was a story surrounding him in Dragon Age of Veilguard. What was it? Oh yeah, Jason Schreier deletes post after failed Dragon Age the Veilguard flex. In a strange attempt to own the chuds, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier posted about Dragon Age the Veilguard reaching the top of the Steam's top seller list with a peak of 58,958 players on its launch day. He couldn't resist adding, "Go woke, go bro," top of the charts, claiming his goal was to enjoy the chuds getting dunked on, but then he seemingly deleted that post because he himself got absolutely dunked on for this awful take. So, of course, take this report with a grain of salt, but it says now Schreier has just published his post-mortem on what went wrong with Dragon Age the Veilguard, but I thought it went to the top of the charts, you guys. That's what the media told me. The 2024 release that only got half the players EA wanted resulted in mass layoffs and appears to have killed the IP altogether. It absolutely sucked. That's really the story. The story is that they took a decade to develop it, they put hundreds of millions of dollars into it, and it just, in general, wasn't a good product. It brought nothing new or unique or original to the table. It didn't appeal to the die-hard Dragon Age fans, but it also just wasn't a really good fantasy game in general. They decided to put modern-day politics into it with things like transgender, non-binary, top surgery scar toggles. You had characters who were only really there to be walking billboards for certain sexualities like Tosh, and even those characters weren't good characters. They didn't have cool stories, and they didn't feel really unique and genuine. Then you get into the mediocre world building. You would think that with Dragon Age they'd have something good to work with, but it's like they completely threw out what made Dragon Age special in the first place and rebooted and modernized, and none of it worked. Sure, maybe they mid-development did have to change around their plans when it came to the pricing structure. Maybe they did end up, starting to go in a live service direction, and then they had to backtrack. But ultimately, it just wasn't a high quality product, and that's the developer's fault. It says some of this has been known to some extent, and some is definitely new. One through line is something we've heard about in bits and pieces, because development on the Veilguard spanned 10 years. It got caught up in the live service / multiplayer trend chasing. When the game was being conceived, of course, the idea was to make it another traditional single-player RPG, but as games like Destiny were starting to take off, multiplayer games rose in popularity, and so there was a pivot to that format. Then later, when it wasn't working, they had to pivot back to the regular RPG, but without being able to start over, just hammering the multiplayer stuff to try and fit it into the single-player mold again. This is what would have happened with the Wonder Woman game if it came out, because originally it was supposed to be a high-quality single-player experience that it was supposed to be very close to Shadows of Mordor, and then they started going in a live service direction. They thought Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was going to be a big hit. They thought that was the future of the industry. And then when that game failed, they decided to not completely restart development, but start to pivot back. They, of course, did cancel it because they decided, you know what, it's just not worth putting out. And hey, maybe they should have done the same thing with Veilguard because it was an awful experience. And now, unfortunately, Dragon Age as a franchise is dead. We're not going to be getting another Dragon Age for at least 20 years, if we ever get another entry into this franchise. I don't think that we will. It says, though, the result of that was a mishmash of pieces that were pulled from both types of games. Other issues compounded this, like the change in tone to be more snarky than the series had been traditionally, and the lack of significant choices. One of the major problems I had was that it felt too politically correct. It felt too modern. And of course, when you add modern politics into it, like transgender, non binary, top surgery, scar toggles, right, that's going to help that kind of feel really weird. But you also just had the very modern dialogue. Like everybody was constantly talking about their sexuality and their pronouns, and it just was awful. So disappointing. There were also segments about how BioWare brought in Mass Effect team members to try and salvage what had become a mess, but there was only so much they could do. I am so worried about Mass Effect. I do not know how that next game is going to turn out. I obviously want it to be good, just like I wanted Dragon Age, the Veilguard, to come out and be good, but there came a point where we all knew it was going to be a failure, and I just hope that doesn't happen with Mass Effect. And I also wanted to show off the very beginning of Jason Schreier's article because he's still coping. In early November, on the eve of the crucial holiday shopping season, staffers at the video game studio BioWare were feeling optimistic. After an excruciating development cycle, they had finally released their game, Dragon Age the Veilguard, and the early reception was largely positive. The role-playing game was topping sales charts on Steam, and solid, if not spectacular, reviews were rolling in. Now, I always think that this is so pathetic because the Access media truly feels like they have authority in this industry. Oh, the solid, if not spectacular reviews were rolling in. Yeah, by the media, by the people who are paid to play and review games, the people who shill for companies so they can keep their access, so they can continue to have jobs. If you actually go to user reviews on basically any platform, people are wrecking the game. If you go to YouTube, people absolutely destroyed this title. Sure, there are a few individuals out there who liked it, and if you're one of those people, I'm glad you enjoyed your experience. I hope you got your money's worth. I hope that you supported this team, but the majority of people didn't like it. But when they are painting this picture as, oh, such a good one, and it got solid, if not spectacular reviews, they're not actually talking about people who had to swipe their credit card for the game. No, they're talking about the fucking shills. This is why you can't take these people seriously, because yeah, they can have their own opinions, but their opinions are almost always wrong. They don't understand what makes games good and what makes games bad. They oftentimes promote games that push the ideology they personally support, and then trash ones that are made by developers who don't bend the knee to cancel culture and outrage and social pressure. Now, of course, I did live stream a full playthrough of Dragon Age the Veilguard on the channel, and I absolutely loathed it. I will never play this game again. It was such a massively disappointing experience, not just to me, but clearly millions and millions of other gamers. So I'll be keeping my eye on this to see if Jason Schreier ends up doing another follow-up. But I went to his social media to see what his response was going to be to getting absolutely roasted for his Get Woke Go to the top of the charts post, and of course his posts are protected, so we'll see what happens with this article, though I think he's going to be wrecked by gamers, and of course now we're just seeing people coping over the fact that this title failed yet again. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.